That is what everybody essentially is focusing on this morning.
The worst interception of all time.
Yeah, that's what they're focusing on, Brian McDonald. Behind the glass for Sean Mapes. They're focusing on C.J. Stroud and that interception that he threw. I'm going to read a couple of headlines that have been put out about Stroud's performance, which actually made it to the top of First Take on ESPN today. One, from ESPN and our guy DJ Biename. We're going to record a Talkin' Texans podcast a little bit later today. C.J. Stroud struggles in Texans debut. CBS, Stroud struggles in Texans debut. AP, number 2 pick, C.J. Stroud struggles in his preseason debut. And then you have this from Barstool. What an absolutely atrocious interception by C.J. Stroud on his first NFL preseason drive. Are all of those characterizations fair? To an extent, yes. That interception wasn't good. And C.J. Stroud, I think by his own account, would tell you that he struggled. But I do think that there were some extenuating circumstances out there that explain it. Number one, the offensive line that was out there was not good. At right tackle, Austin Deculus is in there. That guy does not belong in the NFL based off of what we saw last night. He was an effing turnstile out there. Number two, the rest of the offensive line also was without Laramie Tunsil, Shaq Mason, and on top of that, Titus Howard. So you've got those factors that are just making it difficult for C.J. Stroud. I thought that Stroud, though, from the first drive to the second drive after he threw that interception, did learn a little something. Maybe not to try to extend plays the way that he did on that 15-yard sack that he took. I think he was perhaps surprised that NFL players are going to be able to keep with him because he ran back in the way back behind the line of scrimmage. And he kept going, and I think he thought he was going to be able to turn the corner and get out to the right. And the pass rusher was able to track him down, was able to sack him. And then, of course, you have this 3rd and 25 where you think to yourself, maybe I've got to make a play happen. It's my first game. But no route is designed on that play that he threw the interception on to actually go past the first down marker. There was no, hey, run a go route option there. They wanted Stroud to take what was there. And for a moment, the throw that he made, there was a wide receiver open there. I believe it was Tank Dell. He was open for a moment, but you have to hit that throw quickly. So that first drive was a failure, no doubt about it. But I thought in the second drive, I thought that Stroud showed that he does have escapability, something that is going to be a good crutch to have as a young quarterback. It's one of the reasons I thought that Davis Mills was never going to work out. Mills just does not have the ability to extend plays on his own. And that is his biggest obstacle as a guy who is maybe not the most accurate quarterback in the world. You got to be able to move a little bit. And we're not saying Stroud is Lamar Jackson or anything like that. But I think that to say that he's a little bit like Dak Prescott, as far as his mobility, that is fair. So he showed that off a little bit on the second drive. And I also thought that as a learning experience from the 15-yard sack that he took, and on top of that, from that interception that he threw, I thought that he was a little bit more willing to take a look at checkdowns. And he threw a couple of good checkdowns, I thought. One was high to Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary is a small fellow, and it bounced off his hands. Singletary should have caught that, I think. The other one was a throw that he made to the right as well on the play where he got roughed. That play, I think the ball was also high on that one, but that was the correct throw, put it in a spot where nobody else could get it other than the guy that he was checking it down to, considering he had no time to throw it to, and he had a guy in his face. I thought actually it was a decent ball that he threw. And then, of course, on the left sideline, too, he had another throw to Sims where he extended the play and he threw it. I thought from drive 1 to drive 2, there were serious signs of improvement. It's not to say that, oh, my God, this guy's the greatest quarterback ever, but I think that a lot of people are focusing on the interception. You should focus on what you saw in the second drive of that series. For C.J. Stroud, he only was in for 2 series. And again, you're not like, oh my God, the Texans have their answer at quarterback. Like we once heard my guy, Mark Vandermeer, say, like, Houston, we have a quarterback. Like, we're not saying that yet.
The Colts game. Yeah, right. The Colts game. There was, look, he's a rookie quarterback. It's his first game. There was ups and downs. And I like some of the positives you pointed out. I thought he recognized hot a couple times very quickly when guys were coming in untouched. He didn't complete the pass to Singletary, but partly because he had a leaping Patriots defender in his face. Yeah. He had to put it up high, and like you said, Singletary's a little fellow. I liked what he showed as far as his ability to throw on the run. That pass to Sims you mentioned, I believe it was the pass to Sims. He had a rollout where he threw running away to the sideline, so I thought that was pretty nice to see. But, I mean, look, I think there's going to be, shocker here. He's a rookie quarterback, a learning curve. Some of the things you can do in college, like running away from a pass rusher that you're a better athlete than, or waiting to see something come completely open instead of having to anticipate because the DBs aren't, jumping things like that in college. He's just got to learn that. I mean, in those two things, the sack that he took, it was like 8-9 yard loss and the interception. Those are things he might have got away with in college when he's playing Indiana.
Right, exactly.
That's just, he's got to figure out that this is not the Big Ten anymore, and I can't. Some of those things I could do back then because everyone on the field was better than the person across them is not the same in the NFL, and he'll get there, but he's not going to realize that day one.
Maybe you think you still can get away with it, though, because you're the second overall pick and you see the defense that's out there. There's no Matthew Judon for New England, who is arguably the best defensive player in the AFC. I feel like he's up there, at the very least in the top 5. He's one of Belichick's favorites. They actually gave him an extension. He's not out there. You're going up against guys that you probably think as a rookie you're better than because you are C.J. Stroud. And that is, I think, a fair load of confidence to have in yourself, just given the fact that you're the second overall pick and you played at Ohio State. Lots of guys in this league have a ton of ego, a ton of confidence. That's not to say that Stroud had a lot of ego there. But on that sack, I do think that he thought he could get away. And that's why he extended it as opposed to trying to throw the football away. That is going to be something that I hope we see him develop over the course of the year. But I liked seeing him going from looking deep to saying, okay, I don't have time. I just got to give it to the guy who's my bailout option. And he did that a couple of times. And I think that is a good sign from drive 1 to drive 2. All in all, not a successful night for C.J. Stroud, but I do think that there are more positives to take away than people are saying today. You're all focusing on the interception. Of course we are. We overreact to everything. But I think that ultimately, look at it from that perspective, and you're probably going to see a better Stroud in the second preseason game next Saturday against the Miami Dolphins.
And I hate to bring up one of the previous quarterbacks that's here. I don't even really want to say his name, but
say it.
The rookie quarterback the Texans drafted in 2017, I think his name is Voldemort.
Deshaun Watson, yes.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson.
I choose to say his name. I'm not like those pussies in the Harry Potter world that couldn't say the guy's name. Like, we were going to stop saying Hitler for all time, too? My God, these wizards are absolute wusses. Continue.
But we saw some of the same things from Deshaun Watson in his rookie year, where he thought, coming out of Clemson, where he was the best athlete on the field, that he could run away from the pass rusher, that he could extend the play an infinite amount of time, and he could wait on a throw.
And his biggest issue,
he learned.
He did to an extent. His biggest issue is still the fact that he holds onto the football too long and he gets sacked a lot. He does make plays from time to time.
Remember his first start against Cincinnati? He was like 150 yards passing. Everyone remembers it because he had the 49-yard touchdown run and the Texans won, I believe, on Thursday Night Football. But he was like 150 yards passing in that game. And Deshaun Watson, even the one that we saw at the end of his rookie year where he's throwing like 4 touchdowns at New England when, actually New England was, at the top of their power still. That Deshaun Watson was not the Deshaun Watson we saw, in his first game, his second game. It takes time. I mean, we were talking about the elite of the elite quarterbacks coming out with 2 first-round picks, but even amongst those guys, they're going to have to learn that things they do in college don't necessarily work in the NFL, and they'll have to make adjustments, and I trust Amico to help him make that adjustment.
That's where I'm at. Some other things that I noticed in the Houston Texans' 20-9 preseason victory over the New England Patriots that had nothing to do with C.J. Stroud. Did you guys notice a guy who came into the game as the 3rd quarterback for your beloved Houston Texans? I'm not talking about Davis Mills and all you Mills Mafia truthers out there who need to be institutionalized. I'm talking about the discussion that nobody is willing to have. Not even University of Houston alleged honk Jeremy Branham has the stones to say what I'm about to say right now. We all saw it last night. The great Case Keenum, arguably the greatest quarterback in the history of Houston. Arguably. I'm not going to lay out that argument because I'm too lazy. But Case Keenum needs to be in the competition for QB1 for your Houston Texans. That is my application to First Take. I don't know why I'm yelling. It's time for the truth to be heard. A unpaid, unbiased observer of the Houston Cougars, unlike that chill Jeremy Branham, say that it's time for Case Keenum to compete with C.J. Stroud. End rant. thank you, Case Keenum, for helping the Texans cover in last night's game.
I mean, people have said that Paulie G is the number one Cougs fan in the entire city.
The greatest in the entire city, B-Mac.
I've heard that. Yeah,
the
especially
greatest.
not Jeremy.
Yeah.
Jeremy
Branham
might be like 1C, maybe.
He is
but you're
paid.
number one.
He is paid. I am not.
His affection is bought.
Correct.
Your loyalty is free.
Correct. I am an arbiter of truth.
I mean, Andre Johnson, soon-to-be Hall of Famer, has touchdown passes from Case Keenum on his resume.
Oh.
He hasn't caught a pass from Davis Mills.
That first half.
Case Keenum helped get Andre get into the Hall of Fame. There, I said it.
You're right, B-Mac. Case Keenum. Sunday Night Football 2013 against the Indianapolis Colts while his coach was stroking out. 3 touchdowns.
In the first half. Doesn't matter what happened in the second half.
The Colts kind of forgot what was going on, but people aren't ready to talk about how 10-year veteran C.J. Stroud needs to be, as I break this table, competing with Case Keenum, not Davis Mills.
I mean, first off, I don't think we could replace that table, so please be careful. But second, we haven't heard the reasons why his coach did have a stroke on the field. Maybe it's because he was just in awe of Case Keenum's play.
The best point I've ever heard, D-Mac. People aren't ready for that. But serious observations from last night's game. Will Anderson is doing what he continues to do.
His first step was great.
Holy Christ.
His first step was amazing.
Off the left edge, I forget what play it was specifically, but just like you've seen in training camp, he is just blowing by tackles.
Yeah,
He's so fast off the line of scrimmage, and it's in a way where it's not like with Jadeveon Clowney, who was offsides half the time. Clowney always had a great first step, but Will Anderson, and again, we're not talking about high-end tackles. I don't think the Patriots had their guys in there, but that first play in particular, and a couple other ones.
There was the play where someone else got a sack. I don't remember who it was.
I think it was Jonathan Grenard.
It was Grenard, okay. But I remember watching that because I went back and when the first guys were in, I kind of would watch each play a couple times to look at different guys and see what was happening. And on that play, had Grenard not got there, Will Anderson had completely burned his man. He was right. He would run right by him.
He has, I think, been the stud of Texans training camp. And it's based more on the observations of others. But this was consistent with everything that we have heard said about Will Anderson in training camp. With Stroud, what we have heard is that he learns quickly and that he has gotten better over time. But I think there's still a lot of room to grow. Anderson, from the start, has been very, very good. And I would say, if you're looking for... Like, if you got to pick one of those two, you're putting money on one of them to have a real chance at winning Rookie of the Year. I would say between those two, right now, again, it's August 11th of 2023. Anderson over Stroud as far as winning Rookie of the Year at his position, Defensive Rookie of the Year.
And Grenard, I mean, obviously the sack, but he had another play that you mentioned Clowney earlier. He kind of looked like Clowney, where he shed a run blocker just immediately right off the snap, threw him to the side and made a tackle for loss in the backfield on one of the Patriots running backs. So positive signs from Grenard as well.
Yes, the pass rush as a whole, I thought Kurt Heinisch had some good moments. I thought Roy Lopez had some good moments. And again, it kind of goes to show you that offensive lines in the preseason generally suck, which is why the game is largely an unwatchable product. Also, the Patriots field, Jesus, guys, clean it up. The amount of, rubber pellets that you could see why all these NFL players are bitching and moaning about the fields. That field looked like ass last night. All I could see were the rubber pellets. I could barely see the grass. Not good. One last thing, as far as the observations from last night's game that don't have to do with C.J. Stroud. Tank Dell, there is a burst to him that is exciting. Again, you're going up against guys who aren't the top corners on the New England Patriots, but I love the catch that he had in the end zone. That was a hell of a catch. I don't know how he came down with that.
I don't know how he kept his eye on that.
Right, but also, I like seeing him returning punts, and I hope that he will continue to do what he did in that game. That he was very productive, and there was one throw. This actually frustrates me about Davis Mills. Mills had 2 throws that weren't great. One was over the middle. It was behind the guy he was throwing it to.
I think it was Tank Dell.
It might have been Tank Dell.
I think it was. I know what play you're talking about.
The one they showed the replay angle of.
Like a 5-yard crosser, and he threw it behind him.
Correct. The other one, B-Mac, was the one down the right sideline where Dell did this wiggle at the line of scrimmage and blew by the guy who was covering him. And Mills did not put a good ball out there. And Dell could have done something with it. I thought Dell, of all the players for the Texans, was probably the guy who shined the most and the longest because he was in the game the longest. So, by the way, where did he go to school?
Houston. You You know what I loved about seeing Tank Dell? What do we hear about Tank Dell like this entire lead up from the draft to, mini camp and now training camp is, he's tiny, he's a slot receiver, he's tiny. He was lining up on the outside quite a bit last night. And not only was he lining up on the outside, and granted, again, as you mentioned, it's not the Patriots' number one corners, but he was beating his guys on the outside. So maybe there's more flexibility and opportunity to get Tank Dell on the field.
I hope so.
If he's not only a slot receiver, that certainly can up his production rookie year.
I am hopeful with him, and I think you got to take everything with a grain of salt, but I think you made a great point there, B-Mac. Lining him up on the outside, that was not something I expected to see. I expected, exclusively slot. Again, though, we're talking about going up against backups, so again, we all got pants tense right now. Tuck it in the waistband, okay? These are the fake games, okay?